On today's episode of The Story Detective, we're going to be looking back over week 1 of my Nanowrimo. And last month we had a secondary theme of discussing villains. So this month I think we will continue a secondary theme, but instead of Save the Cat, we'll look at this book that I talked about as far as creating dynamic characters. It really covers things that we know, but sometimes we don't think about. That's where we'll begin here, and we'll move forward from there. After this video, if you're hungry for more character development, I suggest you hop over to Carol Brown's channel. She uploaded a recent video on the subject that I think is great, and listening to a different writer's perspective on these things is always helpful. And while you're at it, you may want to check out Carol's book. She has done a video where she reads the entire first chapter, so you can judge for yourself. And if you want a review on the entire book, check out Del Cecil Runo's recent review. If you like this video, remember to subscribe. Hit all those buttons. You guys know the drill by now. Let's move along. It is currently November 7th, an overcast and rainy day for day 7 of Nanowrimo, as you can see through the window behind me. There is literally nothing better to do on a day like today except get a hot beverage and get your word count in. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to try to get a higher word count than I've gotten so far this week. And I think my highest word count was somewhere between 24 and 2,500 words. So since it's getting late, let's keep it realistic and try to get somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 words today. If I get that, I will be extremely happy, and my word count will be happy as well. If a word count could be happy. So that's what we're going to do today, and we're going to be looking back at the little snippets that I filmed most days, and I say most days because I didn't film every day, my little updates and word count. Things were off to a little bit of a sketchy start. We had a sketchy website that turned us into sketchy nanoites. Because when we come to something that is not what we're used to, it throws us off. And I think that actually threw a lot of us off this year. It took me 3 days of struggling with this story because it's a new story. It's not part of a series. So I had to find my bearings, and that didn't help. That's why I created the Facebook group, and I'm going to leave the link down below again in this video. If you're struggling and need support, the Facebook group that I've created for the people in my Nano group, I think is great. If it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have gotten through this week. That makes it worthwhile. It makes it more personal. And you share the journey with other people that are going through the same things, and you encourage one another. It's actually day 2 of Nanowrimo, but since I didn't film yesterday, I wanted to show the progress of day 1. I'm opting for 2,000 words per day, and I got just above that. Day 1 was a struggle for me. Beginnings are always a struggle. So today, I'm starting things in a slightly different routine. I had a little more time to prepare for this today than I did yesterday. Since, as you know, I started plodding through Preptober with Save the Cat, but then I got this book, and it's saying all the right things for prompts for characters, so this has been a big help. So I'm going to be working on characters while I'm drafting, so I'm kind of pantsing a little bit on that score. I also began my day with a bit of meditation, which is something I've been a bit spotty on, but I'm trying to get back into good habits, healthy mind, healthy body. I have my water bottle. I'm on bottle number 2. I know if I drink 4 of those, I've got my water for the day in. I was also going to work on some fancy charts to keep track of my progress, but I found this for like a couple of bucks. I know Nanowrimo didn't start on Monday, but if you look at the page, it lays out a week pretty well. And I can simply go in and add my little sprints, my little word counts, and then the total at the end, and that works for me. I know a lot of people use a bunch of stickers and get fancy with these things, but I opted for efficiency over fancy, and this will help be a tracker for Nano, and I can use the book for a tracker for other projects too. So for a couple of dollars, it's a couple of bucks well spent. Nancy Kress really comes at creating characters like she's really creating people. She takes the characters back to their roots, their upbringing, where they come from, what their environment was, and how that reflects in what's going on in the current environment of your story. And I think that's important, and that's something that we can kind of overlook when we're looking at building those characters from scratch. Saul Stein has often said, God created a lot of boring characters, but you can't afford to. And yet, we see a lot of subpar characters, especially in movies. If you consider how original screenplays with characters that become iconic are almost unheard of these days, and how Hollywood is borrowing heavily on characters who already have a following from novels like The Hunger Games and comic books, that tells us one thing, that the future of our books, if we want everything good to happen to them, relies more than ever on strong characters that resonate with readers. Would those movies be doing as well without those characters? If you want proof, I think you don't have to look any further than Avengers Infinity War. The character of Thanos was not the characters fans know from the comic books. But if you look at what we covered last month on villains, how much of those characteristics are still present? Not all, but there's enough there to create a credible villain, the strength of which carried that movie. And if a half-hearted Thanos can stand out and bring that kind of attention to box office sales, what might creating a really good character do for your book? So what goes into creating dynamic characters? Those who have stood the test of time. So round one went pretty well. I got 926 words in about 45 minutes, give or take, whatever the course of listening to that CD was. So I think I'm going to repeat that process. And I'm also debating, do I want to push through the day and try to get as much writing in as possible? Or do I want to do a couple of more rounds and try to hit close to 3,000 and then get on with editing, because I need to also edit my video and get it up by this weekend. So multiple things that need to be done and some things to consider. But let's move on to the next round and see where things lead. It's the morning of day 5 of Nanowrimo. This is my day 4 quota. I wanted to film that before I added to it today. Today, with any luck, I'll reach 11,000. And by the way, badges appeared last night. These actually weren't there. When I put in my total, it said that I won a badge. And when I looked, I had the badges for like the first few days. I don't even think these two were there. So I'm not really sure what that was about, but it always seems to be a bit incomplete. But this is small potatoes compared to what some people experienced. I watched Kayla Canu's video this morning, and she was vlogging from day to day. And when she went on day 1 to the site, the project that she entered had completely vanished. I mean, this site has become like a black hole for the literary world. Anyway, today I hope to get to my 11,000 mark. It is a crisp autumn morning, and by crisp I mean chilly, but not in a bad way. It's a day where the air feels clean. It reminds us that summer is gone, and with it, the humidity, which we have on the East Coast. It's a good day for a hot beverage and getting some words down. And I have Earl Grey hot, Jean-Luc Picard's favorite drink, and hope that it can help me to become a little more cerebral as I write today. In Dynamic Characters by Nancy Kress, one of the first things she asks is, where does your character come from? Where were they born? What was their family like? Every character in your novel has an origin story, even if those details don't make it into your book, because knowing your characters influences everything they do, even their dialogue. Did they start life in a big city or a small town? Large or small, every town has its own subculture. Did they go to a public school or private, or maybe they were homeschooled? Each of these situations is going to launch your character into life with a slightly different attitude. Maybe they were bullied in a public school, or became the bully, acting out from a hostile home environment. A posh private school may give them an air of being special or elite. And what if a homeschooling environment made your character feel very smart if their parents catered to them, but in reality, they grew up in a fishbowl? Whatever the circumstances, it's important to remember none of these choices were your characters at that age. These decisions were made for them. How does their exterior reality contrast with what they feel inside? I like to consider what I've termed the law of opposites at every stage. As writers, we're told to insert conflict at every level of our stories, and this is how opposition is built from the inside out. Because whatever your character is molded to be from that early age, once they get out into the real world, the landscape of your plot, who they are within, and everything they were taught, is going to be challenged. A good exercise for figuring out your character's bio is to number a sheet of paper or a Word document, one line for every year of your character's life at whatever age they are currently. Then list the most important thing that happened to your character each year. Okay, not too bad. In round 2, I got 1,038 words, and that puts me at 1,964 words so far for today. So I think if the next round goes as well, I will be close to 3,000, and I will try to push it at least up to the 3,000 mark before I stop and start editing my film. So at the end of day 6, this is my grand new total. I got 2,072 words today. And I thought I would get more, but it was a busy day. I had a live stream with Lisa Daly this morning from 11 to 1. I hopped over to Carol Brown's live streaming, but then I had a doctor appointment and some errands to run, and that took up a good chunk of my day. So I'm still at my 2K goal, and that's fine. I'm happy with these numbers. And there was somebody on the live stream today. This person had like a few hundred words that she got for the total of the sprints that we did, but I was totally proud of her because she was coming on there and doing whatever she could do. And for some people, that's a few hundred words. For me, doing 2,000 a day is something that I know I can do and not make a mess of everything and just have terrible writing. But it took time and practice to build that up. So wherever you are, if you're consistent, and consistency works for me, so if I can do 2K per day, I'm still ahead of the nano curve. So I'm totally fine with that. So you've got your plot figured out, the stage upon which your characters will act out the drama you've created for them. You know where they come from and what brought them to your stage in the first place. But how does all that reflect in their current environment? What do they do for a living? What do they do for fun? And who are the people they do these things with? Make their job seem credible. It may not be a major part of your story, but work plays a role in everyone's life. And when we see them at work, the details have to ring true. If your character is a lab technician and you know nothing about that type of work, you have some research to do, or possibly some interviews with real lab technicians. You have to become your own story detective because you're profiling your characters and you're showing how the inner workings of their mind are reflected in all they do, and that includes what they do for a living. If your character hates their job, there's usually a work hard, play hard rule involved. And outside of work, they may feel the need to escape by partying with their friends. Do they drink? Do drugs? How might they be creating opposition for themselves? Are they wasting a lot of time that could be employed doing other things that might better their situation? Conversely, if they love their jobs, is there someone telling them they should stop wasting their time and get a real job? There's always opposition, conflict, from exterior sources challenging who your character really is, their inner needs and worth. Because these challenges are essentially what your core story symbolizes and what your character needs to overcome if they are to be the hero of their own story. Third round is over. I got 1,095 words. This brings my grand total for the day to 3,059 words, so I broke the 3,000 mark, so pretty happy about that. This brings my grand total for Nano up to 16,233 words on day 7. So this is probably the best I've actually done at Nano. Pleased with the results. The video is done. I can start editing, so good day. I'm not going to be editing as much today as I thought since I ran a little bit later than I figured I would, but tomorrow is another day. I hope you've enjoyed my updates and hanging out with me today while I worked on my challenge. I know there's a lot of Nano out there and a lot of videos to choose from. So if you're watching this one, thank you. I know you have a ton of choices and you're probably inundated with Nanowrimo stuff. So I hope you've got something out of this video and we gave you some things to think about as well. So until next time, keep those keyboards clacking and I will see you on the next episode as the adventure continues.